Hello and welcome to another edition of the Tigers Down Under. I'm your host as always, Alex, and with me today I have Logan.
Good day, everyone.
And I've also got Dan.
Hey guys.
We'll start with a general discussion of the game against Swansea because it was such a fantastic result and one we really needed in our fight for survival. What were your thoughts in general on the match, boys, and especially the, switch in tactics between the first half and the second half?
Yeah, it was a super positive one. I think, obviously, it was a result that we all knew we needed, and the damage that would have been caused if we had have been on the wrong side of the game. In fact, even a draw probably would have still left us with a huge mountain to climb. So it's definitely a positive one, but I think it was the manner of the way we kind of achieved the win by going up 2-0 and up until the kind of dying stages, looking relatively comfortable for the last sort of third of the game. But yeah, obviously the talking point was when Silva decided to go two up front, and we saw the combination of Hernandez and Niasse playing together, and it was it was a really positive sight and something that all City fans would have cherished because it's not something that we get to see too often.
I'd agree as well. Like can't really fault the players on the weekend. They all were outstanding. Swansea, we really restricted them through almost all the game, as Logan said. Like in the first half, they had that one-on-one that Jukovic saved, and a free kick from Sigurdsson was, I think, their only real opportunities. And that's against a team that was in form, which had taken plenty of points in the preceding weeks. So that's got to continue to build on the confidence that's been growing around the club. We were calling for to throw the kitchen sink at them and get a couple of boys up front and see what damage we could cause. And as soon as Niasse came on, you could see the difference in the play, and I think it only took 6 minutes or something for the two to link up and Niasse to get in on goal, and that was a great finish. And the second goal as well, nice little ball in from El Mohammadi, and I don't know whether Hernandez intended to sort of half swing and dummy at that and put the defender off, but he didn't, and Niasse was again in the right spot at the right time. And I mean, that's what we're going to need in the run-in, is to have those strikers, just a little bit of luck and just to be in the right spot at the right time to put the ball in the net.
And it certainly is a growing confidence, especially at home. We've heard the pretty incredible stat during the week that Marco Silva is now 38 games undefeated on home soil amongst 4 different clubs. So I think that's a pretty impressive stat, and one that the players would take a lot of confidence from, because he clearly knows how to set the team up at home. On the player front, though, I guess it's a bit of a mixed bag. We've had good performances from Niasse, obviously, as you've mentioned, and also I thought the defence did quite well. I thought Ranocchio was really good in containing Llorente before he went off injured. But one that's been a bit of a puzzle and an enigma is Grzycki, who he had the posters up around town to get the Polish supporters in watching him, but he's one that's sort of... there's a lot of heat on Markovic, I suppose, because he looks like he doesn't try in games, whereas Grzycki puts a lot of effort in, but is often unrewarded. But particularly that free kick, I think it was in the first half, where it just ballooned over the bar, or it might have actually been the start of the second half, was particularly poor from him. And I guess it's a question that has to be asked is, just because he's putting that extra effort in, is he sort of kind of escaping criticism that otherwise might be warranted?
I think that is a really good question. I think he is escaping a little bit of that criticism at the moment. Soon, though, within the next, probably like over the international break, Silva will have to reevaluate. He's got the time to reevaluate and see where the squad's at and who's been doing what. And I think soon, Grzycki's his inability at the moment to deliver, like to finish off his moves and to deliver a final ball and the final product, it may start affecting his game time. I'm happy to admit that I was wrong about Markovic last week. He put in a great performance, and I hope he can put in another good one. But I think I was reading today, Swanee was saying that just this about Grzycki, that he's he's putting in all the hard work and he's doing great moves and he's taking on his players. But as soon as it comes to the final ball or the final cross, like he's not delivering. I think on the weekend, like almost all of his crosses just went way past the far post, and it's not good enough at this level. And I like Grosicki. He's doing good stuff, but I think there will come a time soon where he may make way for someone else. But I think, sorry, my point on Swanee was that he was saying that Grosicki and Markovic, the two combined, are the perfect winger. Grosicki's work rate and Markovic's just raw talent and skill and technique would make a perfect winger. If only we could, get them on both sides.
Absolutely. And then I guess just as a general point about the players, I'll start with you, Logan, but I'll get your thoughts on who your best players of the match were.
Well, obviously, Niasse has to, certainly he's up there getting man of the match when I think he was only on for around about 25 minutes. So it's hard to argue with that. I thought on top of him, I thought Hernandez was quite good. And also Abdellaoui, he was very crucial in, I think it was the first goal where he picked up the ball from deep and made quite a run and then delivered that pretty decent pass as well. He was critical. And I thought that he was quite strong, but it just it seemed like a pretty balanced performance across the board. So yeah, Niasse is certainly the standout, but I don't think that there was anyone that we could really target with, I guess, with the exception of Grosicki's quality in the final third. I thought that everyone was pretty decent.
And I guess after our criticism last week, it was great to see El Mohammadi also stepping up off the bench, and it was his cross that really set up the second goal, and he certainly looked a lot more confident and a lot more motivated when he came onto the pitch, so that was also great to see. Dan, did you have any other players to add?
I just wanted to make note, like, as I said about Markovic, much improved performance this week. I thought Huddleston was back to his best. I thought, personally, he's had a bit of a little dip in form over the last couple of games, and I thought he was back to his best with his passing game and his ball retention. And I think Jakupovic deserves a bit of a special mention. That the save in the first half was outstanding with his legs. So I think a bit of credit should go towards him.
Absolutely, and a player that hasn't been getting a whole lot of attention in recent weeks because he's just been quietly going about his business is Andy Robertson. He also put in a pretty decent shift, and he's one that certainly he seems to have improved the defensive side of his game under Silva. And I've noticed as well, sort of hasn't been talked about too much, but he's sort of stepped up and is taking a few set pieces, whether that be corners or a couple of free kicks as well. So he's really sort of getting into the right areas, and Silva clearly rates his delivery into the box. And I suppose that's a good time to move on to talk about Andy Robertson, who's our player of the week. He joined us from Dundee United in 2014, which is kind of crazy to think that's almost 3 years ago now, pretty much 3 years now, that he's been at the club. So he's, I think, just turned 24 or 23, so he's been with the club for a little while now, since his younger days. And he actually scored on debut for us against Stuttgart in pre-season, if you guys can remember that one. I think scoring after about 12 minutes as well. So he certainly set the tone for his time at the club pretty quickly. On the international level, he's also scored a first goal for Scotland, which was pretty impressive as a guy that's only been in and around that Scotland team for a couple of years now, I think. He's scored 4 goals for the club in general, and I think probably his most memorable would be the third against Derby in the playoff semi-finals last year, which really after that second leg where we capitulated a little bit and lost 2-0, basically his goal was the one that put us through to the final. So I'll start with you, Logan, and ask you what your favourite memory of Andy Robertson is so far.
Yeah, I certainly think that goal against Derby, as you mentioned, was the key moment, just because of the kind of fashion that it was scored in, particularly when having lost to Derby twice in the season leading up to, I think it was probably the game that all City fans were concerned about the most, knowing that we didn't seem to match up all too well against them. And it almost seemed like the perfect night. But to top that goal off, or to top Andy Robertson's goal off to be the third and ultimately deciding goal, that just, I think at the end of the first leg, we kind of knew that Wembley was almost a certainty. And so I think that just for the magnitude of the goal that it was, I think that seems to be my fondest memory of Andy Robertson.
And then Dan, I'll also get your fondest memory of him as well, but I'll also ask you the question. He's been linked with moves to other clubs probably in the last two windows now. Obviously, the rumours and the suggestion that there was a bid accepted for him from Burnley just on the final day of the last window. There seems to be a lot of suggestion and thought that he'll probably be destined for a much bigger club than Hull down the line, whether that be Liverpool, for instance, or an Arsenal who've also monitored his situation. Do you think that's basically an inevitability?
I think if he continues to progress in the way he has in the time that he's spent at the club, then unless we had a massive turnaround in our overall fortunes and we're pushing ourselves up the ladder consistently, I can't honestly see him staying at us for the duration of his career. Without a doubt, you look at Arsenal and Hector Bellerin is being linked with all sorts of other clubs as well. And if he was to be lured away, I have no doubt that Arsenal would come in firm for someone like Robertson. And Liverpool as well, with James Milner playing makeshift left back like that. I'm honestly surprised that we haven't had a bid in for him, like a proper bid from someone like that yet. I would be bitterly disappointed if we ended up losing Robertson to someone like Burnley, who is, in my opinion, not that much of a bit bigger club than we are. On my favourite memory, with Robertson, I've always found he's always been a really consistent performer without ever really demonstrating anything outstanding that really catches your eye for a lot of the time. But I looked up a bit of stuff today, and I went back to, and I'm going to go with his first goal in the league in England for against Brentford.
Oh, yep.
So it was just a nice play and a nice introduction, and I think that win put us clear on top of the table at the time. Yeah. So
I think that was, I can't remember how many wins in a row that was for us. It might have been 6 or something, but
yeah, it was a reasonably important goal at the time, I think. But obviously, then you look at Logan's choice is equally as important, probably more so, really. But yeah, I think there's a good chance that in the future he will get pulled away to a larger club than ours.
I think for me, my favourite memory of him, and it's probably one that fulfills the potential that we see in him a lot, but we don't really get to see realised on the field too often, was his run and assist against Chelsea 2 seasons ago. When we were down 2-0 pretty early in the game, and he got past, I think, Ivanovic and I'm going to say Willian, but I'm probably wrong on that, and put in a lovely ball for, I think it was El Mohammadi to score a goal, to really set us on our way, with Hernandez scoring a goal literally, I think, about 60 seconds later to draw level in that game at half-time. And that was really sort of the promise that we see in him a lot, with those sorts of runs down the left, brilliant cross into the box, and then you just need someone in the box to finish it off. So I think we've sort of not played to his strengths all that often, and I hopefully with Niasse as that sort of stronger striker in the middle, I mean, we kind of hoped we'd see it with Mbakani a bit more as a good target man in the box for him to get those crosses on their heads and hopefully get a few more assists to his name. But we'll move on and chat about the Everton game, which is the game we have coming up on Saturday night our time, which is a pretty important game for us. As we've already touched on, getting that win against Swansea has really set us back up there with Palace, with Middlesbrough, with even Swansea themselves in that fight for that final safe spot away from relegation. But Everton are no slouches themselves, and they've won their last 5 games at home, and they've only conceded 3 goals in that time, all to the same team, when they beat Bournemouth at home, I should say. And actually, we've not been too good at Goodison Park ourselves. We've only got the 1 point from our 4 meetings there in the Premier League. So all signs point towards a home win. We've only got 1 draw with 9 losses in our last 10 away games as well. So all the stats are sort of against us in this one. But I'll start with you, Dan. Even though all signs point to a home win, sport is a funny thing, football's a funny thing, and sometimes when all of the omens point to one result, often sport will cough up the opposite results. So do you give us much of a chance against Everton?
Look, if everyone's on their game and we play our best football, we can take it to any of the top teams in England. Like we've seen it. We went down 2-0 to Chelsea, but put in a really good performance. 0-0 with Manchester United. We beat Manchester United 2-1 in the second leg of the Cup. 2-0 over Liverpool. Like, we could play against the really big teams. And I think, yeah, if everyone's on their game, guys like Maguire and Huddleston, Markovic has a big game, if Hernandez can, get in the right areas, like, we will give Everton a run for their money. I think, we've been talking about, the swings and roundabouts and when are they going to come and when are they going to come. Watching that Swansea game, I thought, there's a couple of things that happen that you go, maybe the tide's just starting to turn. We're building a little bit of momentum now. Lots of confidence around the club. Maybe this is the time we can cause an upset.
Obviously, big news for Everton during the week with Lukaku rejecting a new deal with them. I finally saw he released a few comments in an interview today regarding his decision not to sign a new contract, and it all kind of surrounds Everton's lack of ambition in his eyes, the fact that they haven't really made too many signings in the last few windows, and really pushed for that sort of top 4 position. Logan, do you think that will have a negative impact on Lukaku or even the team for Everton at home in this game?
I think it's a tough one to kind of guess. When we see these situations, they usually have one of two effects. It will either spur Lukaku on to come out and kind of raise his stock, if you like, by putting in a few large performances like he has been doing for Everton for particularly the better part of this season. But at the same time, you do wonder how much that will unsettle the rest of the camp. I know that Everton are certainly in form at the moment, and they do pose a serious threat to particularly us getting any points this weekend. But it just does have that kind of feel for me that it's kind of become public this week. That if there is any kind of backlash or any kind of signs of any unsettlement in the camp, I think that this would be the week that it would probably happen, or most likely happen. Fortunately for City, it almost seems like whenever City end up playing a team when they've got one of their big guns returning, it always seems to be against us. So let's hope that this weekend that the Lukaku situation does work in our favour and cause some unsettling feelings in the Everton camp.
I guess the biggest regret out of this weekend will be the fact that Niasse can't play against Everton under the conditions of his loan deal, which will be quite frustrating for him. Having scored 2 goals against Swansea, he's now got 2 weeks to wait because we have the international break coming up after the Everton game. But Dan, we've had a bit of discussion about the fact that City seem to look a lot better with 2 strikers up front. Do you see any chance that Silva will start either Diomande, perhaps Jared Bowen, or someone like that up front with him? Adding to that, I saw an interesting suggestion today was that perhaps Markovic could partner Hernandez up front. Would you consider going with any of those options?
I think Silva will follow the same sort of game plan that he has, where he'll start with Hernandez as a lone striker for most of the game, and we'll start the second half and then it'll be 10, 15, maybe 20 minutes in, and he'll pull out one of the 3 midfielders, probably either Ndai or Klukas, and he'll throw on someone up there. Markovic would be an interesting proposition. But I think he'd be fairly too similar to Hernandez. But I wouldn't be, if he threw him up there, I wouldn't complain. He'd be getting the ball in an area where his footwork and his technique and his ability would have the opportunity to shine. But honestly, I'd really like to see Bowen given an opportunity. He seems like he's a young player, and we've seen a little bit of him, and he seems like he's a smart player. You look at guys, so Maguire, he came in, we all knew he had plenty of potential, and he waited and he waited and he waited to get his opportunity. And when he was given it, he just grabbed it with both hands and ran. And I really feel that Bowen could do the same thing if he could just get just a consistent game time, even if it was only that half hour every week or every other week or whatever.
And what about you, Logan? How do you see us lining up at Goodison Park?
I think it'll be a similar formula to the way that we played against Chelsea and the way that we played against Arsenal on the road. I think that we'll certainly be looking to exploit Everton down our flanks. And I don't think Diomande will start. I think that it'll certainly be a Markovic and Grzycki affair with Hernandez playing that lone striker role up front. And I think that depending what happens, we may see Diomande come on late in the game and offer that kind of second option up front. But I just think that given the form Everton are in, I think that we'll have to kind of play with an air of caution, and I think that that's kind of the way Silver will go. That if we were to take a point from the game, I think it would be a huge point. And I'm kind of tipping a 0-0, 1-1 kind of affair.
Well, I'll get your predictions in a second as well. I'll get your Dan's as well. But firstly, I as you mentioned Diomande there, I did want to say it's great to see that with the Norwegian squad announced that Diomande, Alabdalawi and also Henriksen have been named in the squad. So that's positive news for Henriksen because he surely must be pretty close to a return for us. And it's good to see that also Davies has returned to the bench. I think he was on the bench for the first time against Swansea. So he's obviously getting back to some fitness as well, which is great to see because we've obviously had this well-documented injury crisis, so it's great to finally get some of these players back into the side and give us a bit of legs coming towards the end of the season. I mean, Henriksen's basically like a new signing. He's been out since, I think it was towards the end of January or maybe even mid-January. Was it the first leg of the League Cup semi-final, I think? So
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, so it's been a fair while out, so it'll be interesting to see how he fares in the game. Or in the lineup, I should say, if he comes back into the lineup at some point. And obviously, Evandro, I think, is rumoured to be fit for the Everton game. So hopefully we'll have lots of options and Silver will have a decent squad to pick from. But Logan's going for a 0-0 or maybe a 1-1 draw. But what's your tip in the game, Dan?
I think, despite what I said before, that we can take it to them if we play our best football, I think we're going to struggle. And it's saying that it depends. If Maguire and Ranocchia can restrict Lukaku, then we'll give ourselves every chance to get at least a point out of the game. But I honestly think that he might be just a bit too strong because he's a bit more mobile than some of the other big target men, and I think he might cause us some problems. I'm actually tipping us to go down 2-0.
Yeah, I mean, Goodison's a tough place for us to travel, and you mentioned there Ranocchia, and I think he's definitely going to be key to containing Lukaku. He did a pretty unheralded job against Llorente. I haven't seen a whole lot written about his performance, but I thought he did a really great job against Llorente. He was really good in the air against him and also strong in the one-on-one contests, which is what you need, and I think it'll be exactly the same again this week against Lukaku. So I think a lot will come down to that duel, and I think a lot will also come down to how well we can contain their midfield. I think Barkley's coming into a bit of form at the moment, as well as Morales. So it'll be really interesting to see how the wingers go. One interesting point was when we first signed Niasse and Markovic on loan, I joked that Niasse would score against Liverpool and Markovic would score against Everton for their Merseyside rivalry. And Niasse has already filled half that equation, so I'm going to go with Markovic getting his first goal in City colours in a 1-1 draw. And I agree with Logan. I think if we can get a point from this game, it'll be tremendous because I'm pretty sure Palace have a game. I can't remember who exactly they're playing, but they've got a very tough run of fixtures coming up to finish the season. So they'll be wanting to pick up points pretty quickly to pull away, and I can't see them doing it. So the longer we can keep picking up points and putting pressure on them and really giving them something to think about, the better we'll be for it, I think. We played them on the second last game of the season, and we'll probably have an announcement in the next week or two on the podcast about something pretty exciting that we've got planned for that game. But until then, we'll keep our mouths shut for now and keep announcements in our pockets for now. But I'll thank both of you for coming on. So thank you, Dan.
No worries. I'll see you next week.
And thank you, Logan.
Not a problem.
Thanks everyone for listening in. Hopefully we can get the 3 points against Everton and really push on up the table. So until next time, when we've got a game after the international break, come on City! You've been listening to the official Hull City Australia podcast. For more discussion, join us on Facebook in the Hull City AFC Australian Supporters Group or follow us on Twitter @Hull City AFC Oz. The music was created by Amber and Black.
There's no turning back 'cause you're out.